They said I was nothing, so I became everything. My name is Emily Carter. I am 34 years old. And this is the story of how I turned my family's betrayal into my greatest revenge. It's not the kind of revenge you see in movies. No explosions. No poison in the tea. But something quieter, colder, and far more satisfying. You know how some families say they love you, but what they really mean is, "You're useful?" Yeah. That was my family. I grew up in Manchester, in a modest house with blue curtains, and the constant sound of my father's voice echoing from the living room TV. He owned a small construction business. Carter and Sons. Notice that. Carter and Sons. No daughters. When I was younger, I used to ask him, "Dad, why isn't my name on the sign?" He'd laugh. A loud, dismissive laugh. And say, "Because one day, love, you'll marry and change your name. But your brother, he will carry the Carter legacy." That was the first time I understood what my place in the world was supposed to be. Invisible. Replaceable. Secondary. But I didn't complain. I studied hard. I was the top of my class. While my brother, James, barely passed his exams. I graduated with honors in economics from King's College London. Dad didn't even attend my graduation. He said he was too busy with real work. I told myself it didn't matter. That success would speak for itself. And in some ways, it did. I got a job at one of the top investment firms in London. Gresham Capital. I started at the bottom. Coffee and spreadsheets. But I climbed my way up. Slowly. To analyst. Then senior associate. By 29, I was handling portfolios worth millions of pounds. But whenever I visited home, none of that mattered. Mom would still hand me the dishes after dinner, while James sat on the sofa scrolling through his phone. And Dad would talk about how proud he was of his boy. His boy, who had recently joined the family business. Which, by then, was struggling to survive. I tried to help. Truly. I offered to do a financial audit. Restructure the debts. Even bring in investors. Dad looked at me and said, "That's men's work, Emily. Don't worry your pretty little head." That sentence stayed in my brain, like a splinter. 2 years later, everything collapsed. The company went bankrupt. James had been mismanaging funds, paying himself ridiculous salaries, taking risky contracts. Dad lost almost everything. And guess who he called first? Me. He didn't apologize, of course. He just said, "We're in a bit of trouble. I need you to look over some numbers for me." Part of me wanted to hang up the phone, but the other part, the dutiful daughter, couldn't. So I drove up to Manchester. When I opened the books, my jaw dropped. It wasn't just mismanagement. It was chaos. Unpaid taxes. Missing invoices. Fake receipts. James had practically bled the company dry. When I confronted them, Dad slammed his fist on the table. "Don't you dare talk to your brother like that. He's trying his best." I looked him in the eye and said, "His best is stealing from his own father." That was the first time my father slapped me. The room went silent. My mother whispered, "Emily, don't make things worse." I walked out that night. The next morning, I found my things packed in a suitcase by the door. A note sat on top. Written in my mother's handwriting. "It's better if you don't come around for a while. Your father needs peace." Peace. They wanted peace. And I wanted justice. I spent the next 3 years building a life that had nothing to do with them. I moved to London. Buried myself in work. While my colleagues went out for drinks, I stayed behind. Studying markets. Perfecting strategies. Earning promotions. By 33, I was one of the youngest portfolio managers at Gresham Capital. People who once ignored me were now asking for my opinion. Then one morning, my assistant walked into my office holding a stack of documents. "Hey Em," she said. "There's a new acquisition list from the Distressed Asset Fund. You might want to take a look." I flipped through the folder. When I saw the name, my heart stopped. Carter and Sons Construction Limited. It was listed for liquidation. Valued at pennies compared to what it once was. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. Then a strange calm settled over me. The kind you feel when the universe hands you the very thing you didn't know you were waiting for. I closed the folder and whispered, "I'll take it." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my father's words. "That's men's work, Emily." Well, men's work was now mine to own. The next week, I used a holding company to buy the remains of Carter and Sons. Legally, my name was nowhere on the paperwork. Emotionally, it was carved into every brick. When I arrived at the old Manchester office, it looked worse than I expected. The once busy workshop was dusty. Half the equipment gone. A for sale sign hung crookedly near the entrance. I ran my fingers over the old sign. The faded paint still read, "Carter and Sons." I whispered to myself, "Not anymore." Over the next 6 months, I transformed everything. I brought in new management. Rebranded the company as Carter Group. Gender neutral. Modern. Sleek. We hired engineers, architects, and consultants who actually knew what they were doing. And slowly, the numbers started climbing. Within a year, we were profitable again. The irony, my father had no idea who the new owner was. Until one day, he found out. It happened on a grey Monday morning in November. My assistant buzzed through the intercom. "Emily, there's a Mr. Carter here to see you. He says it's about a potential partnership." My heart skipped a beat. I took a breath and said, "Send him in." The door opened. And there he was. Older. Thinner. A shadow of the man who once told me I'd never understand business. He didn't recognize me at first. The office was too modern. Too bright. He looked around nervously and said, "I was hoping to speak with the owner. I heard they're looking to expand locally." I smiled. "You're speaking to her?" His eyes widened. "Emily." "Yes, Dad. It's me." For a few seconds, he just stood there. Silent. Like his brain couldn't process it. Then his eyes fell to the logo on the wall. Carter Group. He understood. "You bought it," he stammered. I nodded. "No, Dad. I rebuilt it." He sat down, his hands trembling. "I didn't know. I didn't think." I leaned forward. "You didn't think I could? Is that what you mean?" He looked up. Ashamed. "Emily, I made mistakes." I wanted to scream. To throw years of hurt back in his face. But instead, I said calmly, "Yes. You did. And I learned from every single one." That meeting ended politely. Almost awkwardly. He thanked me for the tea. Said he was proud. Though it sounded like the words hurt to say. But when the door closed behind him, I finally exhaled. It wasn't anger anymore. It was peace. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about proving they never had the power to destroy you in the first place. The media picked up my story eventually. Headlines like, "Emily Carter, from overlooked daughter to CEO." I read them quietly. Not for the fame, but for the confirmation. Because they once told me I was nothing. And now, I am everything.